laptops. I mean, where did this kind of decision come from? Or do you think that they do it out of convenience? I mean, it's good to have a wireless system. Everyone can just run around wherever they want to. Or why did they do this? Do you know?
Well, I think there's different ideas of why they've done this, but mainly, I think yes. I think it on the surface appears to be easier in that children, say at secondary school, can move from room to room with their laptop and continue with classes from different professors or different teachers.
Right.
But that doesn't hold up to examination because they have it here in all primary schools. And primary is only up to the age of 10, 11. And these children, when they're in primary school, I don't know about where you are, but they don't move classrooms.
Right.
And they also don't even move out of their desk. They get the one desk for the whole year.
Yeah.
So why would they be bothering to give them wireless? Whenever they could have a wired laptop sitting there or a wired computer.
Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
And it's going to cost more in the end anyway, because whenever you give a laptop to a child, he's going to spill a drink on it, or hit it, or drop it, or take it home. So there's a huge industry here that's going to make a fortune, because they'll all have to be replaced. You can't really repair laptops in the same way as you can a computer.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess that the argument is, well, you can have your homework on there, you can bring it home or whatever. But I mean, in many cases, if the school would have a network that you can access from home on your desktop computer, that wouldn't be any problem there, right?
No, it's no different. And so there is no actual need for this object in a school.
Right.
What we're talking about is the only difference between one laptop that's wired into the system and another one which is wireless is a piece of wire and a plug.
Yeah.
And we're taking huge risks with the health of all of our children for a piece of wire and a plug.
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I actually treasure my children much more than a wire and a plug.
Yeah, exactly. That's very much the way to go. I mean, but there have been now, though, studies made in the UK, and they've actually started to remove the Wi-Fi in some schools. Isn't that true?
That's very true. There's a number of schools that have taken Wi-Fi back out. After parents have complained, some students and even a teacher have gotten ill. In fact, the Professional Association of Teachers here in the UK, they had one of their members who started getting very ill when they turned the Wi-Fi on at the school. When he complained and they turned it off, he got better. So they took it out of the school. Now that union has been demanding a health and safety study of all of this equipment because none has been done. They've actually just put this on the market without knowing what it does to people.
Right. And wasn't it also the company you mentioned previously, Orange? They've been kind of, I guess, cornering the market, so to speak, both in regards to the cell phone, the amounts of towers that they put up and so forth. But there was something recently in the news about what they have called the Tower of Death. Have you heard about that?
No. Whereabouts is it?
That was basically several people in a building where they have put a mast on the roof of the building, and many people started to get sick. Some got cancer and so forth. So many in the end that they were forced, I think, to remove the entire mast from the building. Yeah,
this has happened before. I've read about other places where they put masts on the roof of high-rise buildings. And the problem with doing that is, of course, you have static electricity underneath it. And you have a large amount of this stuff up close. And nobody's done any studies to take a look at what's happening in these buildings. But we do have an example of what does happen whenever microwave masts are pointed at a building. Now, this is history. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but back in the 50s and into the 70s, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, in Russia, had the highest cancer rate per head of the population, per person. They had 2 ambassadors in a row die of tumors, and a lot of the other staff all had cancer of different kinds, and migraine headaches, sleeplessness, joint pains, numbing, all kinds of strange illnesses came on them. And the Americans sent over a specialist team from Washington to find out what the problem was in the building. When they got to the top floor where the ambassadors sat, and the secrets were all kept, they found it was being bombarded with pulsed microwaves from 3 masts in a circle around the embassy, pointing in on purpose to the top floor. Now, the Russians themselves, at that time, led the world in microwave research. And their studies had shown them that whenever animals were exposed to microwaves continuously like this, pulsed microwaves, they got cancer, they got illnesses, confusion, and migraine headaches, and so on.
Right.
So they decided to experiment on the staff of the embassy. It's quite a famous case because the Americans then asked them to take the mast down, and the Russians refused, and they were forced to go to the UN to demand them being taken down, which they were.
Right. But and this is interesting because this might have actually been then the kind of predecessor, so to speak, to some of the microwave weaponry that is being, used on population and what they call kind of crowd control weaponry. Have you heard about that?
Yes, absolutely. There's a thing called, at least over here, the Americans have designed it. It's called a people zapper. And what it is they say there's people who are congregating in a square and they're complaining about taxes or whatever it is. A little van will pull up and it'll have a little antenna, and it'll send out microwaves all over the place and burn holes in the people. And they'll then leave the square. So they consider this to be a great piece of crowd control weaponry that they now have.
Right. And they call it non-lethal weapons, but that's not true because in the end, obviously, if this continues or, we have other things that could pop up along the way here. We could have irreversible damage to the DNA and things like this. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Not only that. There are a lot of variations between people. So that, say, there are babies who get exposed to this. They're not going to be as able to take this kind of firing of a weapon. What if there's elderly people with pacemakers?
Yeah.
If you have a pacemaker and you get hit with pulsed microwaves, it can turn the pacemaker off. So there's a lot of different issues here, but they're not even looking at this. They're just looking at it's great for crowd control.
Exactly.
The other thing a scientist has told me, who has written a book on this microwave weaponry, is that they now have a rifle, and I can't verify this, but I've been told this, that they have a rifle which can fire pulsed microwaves from about a half mile away, and it can hit a person in the side of the head and make their blood-brain barrier explode in their head. So, and there's no gunshot. And the good thing about microwaves for a weapon is that microwaves travel in a straight line. They don't get put off by wind, and they don't get pulled by the Earth's gravity. So they just travel in a straight line. So it makes it perfect for a killing weapon.
So this could actually be some kind of new kind of assassination, like a sniper almost, sitting very, very far away. Isn't that right?
Yes, and making no noise at all. And the person just dropping dead at your feet.
Exactly.
And since there wouldn't be a hole, you wouldn't suspect that he'd been shot. You'd probably think he had a heart attack or something.
And could this signal also go through walls, things like this?
I'm not sure if the gun needs a complete sight to hit you.
Right.
I'm not sure. I know that they're working, of course, on weaponry that can go through walls. You know that the military are continually looking at ways of using all kinds of new technology for weaponry.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
This is the latest one. And
exactly.
I know that they're using it because they're now starting to sell the fabric. They have fabric that has stainless steel threads in it, so that for making uniforms for our military. Because in combat now, other countries might start using microwaves too. And so our military have to be covered with something that will repel the microwaves without burning the person inside the suit.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. Obviously, you can keep an eye on what the military is doing in regards to urban warfare, things like this, that kind of nature. And we can see that if they're using this kind of protection things, we can know almost to a certain degree that they are using it, or at least worried about this kind of weaponry, and that means that they have knowledge about it. They are probably using it themselves, right?
Absolutely, I have no doubt at all. As I say, this author has written a book all about a whole range of different weapons that the military now have,
right,
that they've been using.
What was
so these have been invented.
What was the title of the book again?
Well, I'm not sure. It was the author's name was Tim Riffett.
Ah, Tim Riffett. Okay, yeah, sure, I've heard of him. Yeah, very interesting. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about some of the effects of all this. Now we've kind of outlined that wireless is something that is basically everywhere. Cell phone frequency, different kinds of radiation, microwaves going around, bouncing around. What are the consequences of this? What happens to the human body? What can we see, and what has been done in the past? I guess we could start with a story that you told me about that had to do with a blood transfusion, right?
Yes. Now this has to do. There was a woman who went in for a fairly minor operation in the Midwest, somewhere in America. This was back in the early 90s. She went in for this operation, and normally they decided to give her a blood transfusion. And normally, before a doctor puts the blood into you, he heats the blood in a regular oven, a convection oven, and he brings the temperature of it up so that it doesn't put you into shock whenever you bring it into the body. Mm-hmm. A nurse put the blood, this time, into a microwave oven, and she heated it up to the same temperature as it would have been in a regular oven. They then put the transfusion into the woman. As soon as the blood hit the woman instantly died. They weren't able to revive her. And when they did an autopsy on her, they found that the blood was no longer viable for human life. It had been so shattered, the DNA in it had been so shattered, that it couldn't keep her alive. And so another doctor, I think his name is Hardell, in Switzerland, read about this, and he did a study. Now, I'm quoting this out of the Ecologist magazine as well, so it's well researched. He did a study where he took 10 doctors, and he got them to agree to live on microwave food and ordinary cooked food, and then to take blood before they ate the food and after they ate the food and see if there were any changes. And in all 10 people, if the food was even heated in a microwave oven or thawed in a microwave oven, they had enormous changes to their blood. Their white blood cell count went down, and it stayed down for hours. And it was true for everybody. When they ate regular food, their blood was fine, quite normal. So we now know that there are blood changes when you get exposed to microwave food.
So what you're saying is there that if you're microwaving the food and then eat it, you get the same effects, if you will, like if you actually were exposed yourself to microwaves?
Well, yes. First of all, when the article is stating that whenever the research was done, they found that the food actually radiated microwaves for a period of time, a number of minutes after it had been cooked in the oven. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but that the shattering of the DNA to the food and the loss of nutrition was much higher, so that you lost something like 40% of the nutrition through cooking in a microwave oven. And when the food was, as I say, the Russian research showed that when the food was fed to animals, they got cancer and other ill health effects.
Oh my God! And this seems to be, I've talked to friends and others, relatives and so forth about, stating fairly basically that microwave food, isn't good for you, and the consequence, again, as you said here, if it's not good for the food, then it's not going to be good for you because you're going to eat it. But often it's kind of laughed away, or some people just don't get it or believe it or whatever. But I mean,
I know that in Russia in 1976 they banned the microwave oven in Russia because of the research that they had done that showed that it caused cancer, and also that the food was less nutritious because, let's face it, in Russia, they're not going to grow extra